What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another week of DFS picks. It's BobbyFi with my man Jake Rohde, aka Rohde51. Rohde, you've been the hot one to talk to. So, you guys, I'll default to Rohde on most things. I'm always the guy who I told Rohde before we were starting this. I said week 4 is when I start getting more heavily involved and when I start doing better usually. And then I tend to do well at the very end of the season and the very middle of the season for some reason in the NFL. So this should be my week that I start improving. But Rohde has been really close last week had a real millionaire shot there for a little bit. And then the week before takes down the FanDuel Live final and the Monster, second in the Monster, excuse me. Rohde, how you doing? And what are your sort of initial thoughts like on this week?
Oh man, I'm doing all right. I'm just feeling like we got a takedown here at True DFS. Somebody's gonna get one. We got to see some big screen chats in the Discord. Been really excited talking with a lot of guys in the Discord. If you guys aren't in the Discord, make sure you get in the Discord. We talk a lot of strategy, a lot of different constructions this week. We had some good charts thrown up in the Discord as well. I don't know when it's not going to be free anymore, but get in there before you can get in on that. So a lot of good talk. I think there's some good stacks this week. I don't think people are on, so that's kind of where I'm going to target.
I love it. I think there's some really interesting spots, especially like with some things opening up this afternoon after the Friday practices. It's going to be interesting to see what happens because we haven't really had value at wide receiver, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But like we're going to have some standout like potential value. Now, value is obviously with receivers can go every which way, but when you lose your number 1 and 2 wide receiver, and you're a team that's been playing faster and throwing the ball, even though they can lean on the run game, it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Washington too, in an interesting game environment that I'm sort of starting to, after talking with Sheets a little bit, started to maybe get a little bit more into maybe getting into that game stack. But I guess we'll start it off with game stacks and then we'll go by positions. But I'll go real quick with what games I'm targeting, and then we'll talk a little bit more when we talk about positions, the guys I'm targeting in those games. But I like the Buffalo game, but especially the Buffalo side of it. I'm debating whether or not I want to run back Cooks even. I could see that being really ugly. I could see them getting shut out. I think the Buffalo defense on FanDuel is like, it's a lot easier to get to their defense on FanDuel. Obviously, don't want to spend $4,300 on a defense on DraftKings very often. But I love the Buffalo stack. I love the KC stack. That's my favorite probably right now, what I currently have the most ownership in. And I don't, look, some of these guys are going to say, oh, but that's so, you guys are doing the obvious thing. Well, not everything can be obvious, first of all, because you can't play everybody. And I'm looking at guys like Mahomes at 6% owned. I'm going to throw away all the numbers. I'm looking at Tyreek Hill at 8% owned. I'm looking at Travis Kelce at 7% owned. And that's exactly what happened week 1. And that won all the money and won all the millionaire makers, which there was a bunch of that week. I'm very into that stack and I do want to run it back a little bit with maybe, any of the 3 receivers, specifically probably Rager. And I think Devontae Smith would be my preferred option, but I love that game stack. I like the Minnesota Cleveland game. I like the Rams in Arizona. And then I'm getting interested in you have the main game stacks, and then we can talk about our secondary stacks all the time. I think I'm going to get involved in the Atlanta, Washington secondary stack business. And I think that there is a case to be made for Seattle and San Francisco, and Dallas and Carolina. But Dallas and Carolina is my first one. I just am starting to get maybe more involved in the I like Metcalf, especially this week. I think that's why I like that one. But I think the Cleveland Minnesota game could be really interesting as well. What are your game stacks that you think you're probably going to be targeting?
Well, I mean, I don't think I can say anything different from what you said. Those are the best games. I think the target Arizona Rams, KC Philly. Don't forget about the Philly side, though. I know you talked about Mahomes and stuff. I do like Hurts. I think, KC's not getting to that rushing the quarterback as much, so he might have a little bit more time. Definitely get to Hurts, maybe a skinny or with like Smith you just talked about, where I really like, or you can even play him naked. We haven't seen the naked quarterback yet this year really, but I do like Murray and maybe Hurts a little bit more naked because Murray's passing it. There's so many options on the Cardinals right now. I just don't know who to pair it with. And Minnesota I really like. I've been heavy on Justin Jefferson. Obviously I had him chasing that Millie last week. Washington, Atlanta, I don't know. You said you were thinking about targeting them a little bit more after talking with Sheets. They got some real cheap pieces, guys. The stack's real cheap. You can get a nice stack, kind of work your way into guys, add it into that, which is really nice. And then for sure the Seattle game. I mean, obviously I've been around Russell Wilson like crazy this year. I know a couple other people are talking about how they haven't been that good and all that, but I took second in the Monster. When these guys go out and tell you like, oh, I didn't do that good with the Russell stack, they just didn't have the right secondary stacks. That's like right. Lockett had a huge week, and like you just had to pair them up in the right stuff and have the right secondary pieces. So don't forget about the secondary correlations. DK has been huge on my list. There's some secondary. I know people think they're going to be running a little bit more, so they're going to be low owned. I really like Seattle this week. I don't really have any sweet stuff yet. I'm diving in. I'm seeing nobody talk about Green Bay and Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Could be a skinny. I know Devontae's under 8K. I mean, on DK. I mean, I don't know about that, but that guy's elite in PPR. And Rodgers at 6.8K. I know they haven't been playing good, but if they're low owned, man, I mean, that might be an MME guys you're taking off for the $3 or something, the 20 entry max or something. So look for those kind of like get weird high upside stacks. Rodgers to Adams can go for 3 touchdowns easily. And
you have an awesome run back in that
5.
one. Yeah, you can run it. You run it back with Harris.
And then Harris is chalk, right? So you can run it back and get low on with the stack, and then still have a good running back that's getting a lot of usage in the Steelers against the Packers that have been giving up a lot to the running backs, or even he catches some passes lately too, right? He's been a workhorse.
15 passes last week.
He had what?
15 catches last week, Harris, I think.
Yeah. That's what I mean. He's like doing everything for the Steelers right now. They're kind of in a turmoil, so it's good to get ahead of that stack, because people aren't on that stack because the Steelers are coming out like, oh, we're playing awful and this and that. So get ahead of those kind of stacks and beat people to it. That's how you win the money.
I'm totally with you. And I don't have as much of the quarterback. I do have the Adams and Harris all over the place. That's not going to be as unusual, but I think I'm definitely open to getting there with that stack. Let's talk about some quarterback options, because we did just mention it's going to be in our stacks, right? So they're going to be basically the same things. And it is going to be, in most cases, for me, Mahomes is my highest owned. Josh Allen is right now my second highest owned. Kyler Murray is my third highest owned. And then I have Jalen Hurts, like you just mentioned, and Matt Stafford is my other 2. And then I'm debating whether or not I want to go the Cousins or Baker route, or I want to use that game as a secondary stack with just using the weapons and maybe leaving the quarterback out of it. But I'm open to your Rodgers idea. Talk a little bit more. You know Green Bay better than most people. The one thing about Aaron Rodgers is that he never, for a guy who's been as elite as he is for as long as he has been, he never is owned, ever owned. And he was on, I think it was 4 Millionaire Makers. Was it last season? I think it was last season that he was on.
He at least won 1 million. 1 million. We talked about it in the Discord, guys. Once again, before the season started, about Rodgers wasn't a million maker lineup, at least one that I know of. We were talking about that stack because he's usually so cheap at 6.8K and DK this week.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And speaking more of what you're saying about the skinny stack, like you remember week 1, what won the $5, and I believe it won the big one too, was no, it didn't win the big one. It won the $5, but it was a Joe Burrow to Higgins with no run back. And then it was the KC, it was Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce without Mahomes, because you couldn't afford all of them together. And that's what won it. So you can think like that. You know what I mean? Try to open your mind to that. I just am honestly shocked when I think about the Mahomes ownership. Look, narratives do matter in certain cases. You think they're not going to want to put their foot down in this game? It's not only, hopefully Andy Reid is healthy and all okay and everything like that on a more serious note. But what are they going to do? You think they're going to mess around and keep, like last week, they grind the ball up the field in not in no time. They actually took up time, and their first 3 possessions, turnover inside the opposing red zone. That's not going to happen that often with this Chiefs team. The upside to me is so much higher than every other team. And I really truly think they could be up 28-0 at halftime or 28-7 at halftime. And they come out the second half just gunning away the whole time. I mean, really, unless the game gets into like 50 to 10 or something, I think you're going to see them just absolutely lay it on if they can. Now, I'm not saying it's anything about Philadelphia, but if there's one thing that we've learned in Patrick Mahomes' time, there is he has no problem with any team. It doesn't matter who they're playing against. There's no team that's going to give him extra trouble, especially if he's got an offensive line that can protect him, unlike he did in the Super Bowl, which was really a shame. Who else? So you mentioned Wilson. I don't want to ask you your exact percentage. I know you're still looking at stuff. But like if you're playing Rodgers, we mentioned 6-7 guys basically. I want to be over the field on them. Like Mahomes, I can say I want to have like 20% of them, maybe higher. Is there somebody who you feel like you're going to be significantly other than? I mean, you mentioned Rodgers. Where do you see would you have 10% of them? Where are you kind of looking in terms of those kind of things? I'm just sort of wondering.
No, that's a great question, Bobby. I wish I had a solid answer for
I know. It's a tough one to pin you on the spot.
Dude, that's on the spot right there. That's tough, especially when I haven't built my MME builds yet. But in single entry, yeah, I'm gonna have Mahomes in a build. I'm gonna have Jalen Hurts. I like that stack, like Devontae and Smith and I think I think in that stack, I want to do like a Edwards-Helaire / Kelsey or Hill run back, depending on if I do three Eagles. So like if you do a Goddard, Devontae Smith, Hurts, and then run it back with like a Hill and Edwards-Helaire, like a bigger game stack for like a single entry, smaller field. That's a good way. I know everyone asked me, how do you build these different lineups in these different contests? Every week in the Discord, we're talking about it, how to build these different lineups for the contest and building a lineup. And that's kind of like an idea. Kyler Murray would be a skinny stack. Again, I really like that. I think he's low owned. Jalen Hurts is low owned. Mahomes is low owned. Those are the guys I'm going to be targeting more. But I'm usually the guy that like spreads out my MME at quarterback. So I'm like a 10% guy. So if I build 50 lineups, I might have, 5% of this guy, 5% of this guy, 5% of this guy, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Right. So those are the guys I just named. I'm going to get a little bit of each one. And I'm just going to make sure my stacks are good and hope one of them carries me to the top. Like last week, I had a bunch in the top 300 in the DK Millie Maker. I only built 50 lineups. So I had a bunch of different outs there at the end, giving myself shots because I had different exposures and different type of stacks. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, talk about a low owned guy at the top. I mean, near the top. I mean, Kyler Murray is the nuts anytime. And I understand it's my Rams defense is awesome. I just want to say that is exactly the kind of situation Kyler Murray could go completely nuts in. If your defense is really good at getting to the quarterback, you know what Kyler Murray is good at? Avoiding a rush. And that's all these Rams do. And look, they're better this year than they've ever been. But if this guy makes one spin away and doesn't get sacked for that 7-yard loss, somebody's going to be open down the field or he's sprinting down there for a 50-yard gain. The one problem the Rams defense has had, and they've been awesome for the last 3 years, is they give up these giant plays. So maybe it is a Tyler, maybe it's a him to Moore week. You know what I mean? But the fact that you're going to have like almost no ownership on Kyler Murray, it just seems kind of crazy to me. I get it. I look at all the other options. It makes sense to me. But I always want the running quarterbacks. I think there's so much upside with them that way. And the Rams could be up 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. I'll still like my Murray stacks because they're going to be able to move the ball at least a little bit, and they'll hit some big plays. And if you get the right up, whether it's Kirk, Moore, or Hopkins on those big plays, I think that there's a really good argument for he and Mahomes. I love that I'm going to have like probably between them close to 40% of my lineups, and they're going to be a combined, close to less than 10% according to what we got on RG right now. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good week to play. I mean, there's a lot of it's spread out. One game we haven't talked about, we should probably talk about. The Dallas
Carolina. Yeah.
Carolina game. That's probably where a lot of the chalk's going to be. I know people probably look at the prices on that game and like, wow, Dak's 6'7". His receivers are like 6K. Like, I mean, it's just ridiculous pricing. I think you can get a good stack there. But obviously everyone's going to go there, guys. So we're not going to tell you guys just stack that game because you're going to want to get different and pay up for like Murray at 7-8. We talked about Mahomes at 8-1. Bobby really likes Josh Allen this week. I get they're playing Houston, but that's a good stack. You think he's going to come in at 16% owned? I mean, that's a high
at the first glance.
Pretty high.
But they do the thing though where they lay it on you. You know what I mean? Last week they won 35-0. He put up 37 fantasy points. When they get going, they just completely lay it on you. So you don't have to worry about like the blowout that doesn't fit his narrative or whatever. They're going to go 3.5 quarters. He's going to be throwing the ball pretty much no matter what, or running the ball. And he is their whole offense. And it's funny because you have him as popular, and then I'm not particularly interested. I get the idea of Beasley, but to me, you play Beasley in the games. I understand he's had big weeks in some games that aren't like this. So it doesn't always have to be gospel, because they basically are using Beasley as an extension of their running game on these little quick out routes, things like that. That's why he's got 13 targets twice in 3 games so far this season. But if you avoid Beasley, avoid Sanders, who I like, and not that I don't like either of them, and just play Diggs at pretty low ownership. And the weird thing is like, I could make a really good argument to stack this, like go for the hammer stack with Buffalo, play 2 of those guys with Allen, and then play the Buffalo defense on FanDuel at least. I think that works because they will hammer you. They don't have no problem continuing to throw the ball when they're up by 4 touchdowns. And not many teams are as much that way as the Bills are, because they just don't use their running game is to set up their passing game, and their running game is mostly Josh Allen. So that's the way I see that one. But I do think at that high of ownership, I will be below the field on Josh Allen. I'll have to be, because I like these other guys too much. It's also weird to see Lamar Jackson so low owned, but it all fits that category for all of them. Lamar and Kyler are the ones though who I would try to go after, even though I'm not as into this game particularly, and Denver's got a good defense. His floor is so high. The rushing upset side is so high. I think there's a 40-point game coming soon for Lamar Jackson, and maybe this is the week. Who knows? He's the only other guy we didn't mention that I talked about. I like Dak, and I like the passing game on both sides in Carolina and Dallas. I think the running backs are going to be a little bit under-owned. I have a feeling, though, that what if both teams are actually just a little bit like they're good? I think Dallas is good, and I think that Carolina they look good so far anyway. If they're both just good, you could see one of those sort of, maybe it's like a 21-17 game, but still, like you mentioned, the pricing, and we'll get to the receivers in a bit, but they're just too cheap in that game. And I think Chuba Hubbard is like, we saw this, let's transition over to running back too, because we talked about the quarterback thing and talk about secondary game stacks or whatever. That's sort of how I'm using this game. I'm using a lot of Chuba Hubbard this week. And it's not like, look, I'm not saying that he's Christian McCaffrey. We saw this with Mike Davis last season. We've seen this in the past whenever McCaffrey's been down. There's huge opportunities because of the way they have their offense designed around McCaffrey. Now, this year, it's a little different because Darnold can move the ball downfield a little bit better than the quarterbacks they've had previously, and they have some actual weapons at wide receiver. They have 3 legitimate ones. But if everybody's going to go that route, why don't we talk about the other part of it? I like both running backs in that game. I know we were talking about the Zeke thing the other day and all that stuff, and I think his only problem is that Pollard is legitimately really good. But there's no reason why Zeke couldn't break a slate and put up 35 fantasy points one of these days if they feel like they're over, covering the pass too much. So I sort of like using that game with one of the running backs and then coming back with whether it's Moore, Lamb, or Cooper. But my favorites, I know that Lamb is going to be the lowest owned. I think CD is going to be the guy I play a little bit more than Cooper in this season. I think they're going to pay more attention to Cooper, and there's more ways they can get Lamb involved than Cooper. Cooper's like the best route runner I've ever seen. Not really, but he's an amazing, other than Cooper Kupp. But I really, that's the way I would look at my secondary stacks for that game. And that's how I'm sort of using my running back this week, which is why I'm sort of transitioning like this. Like if I'm going to play Derrick Henry, if I'm going to play, let me skip the top guys. I'll go to my other guys, but Najee Harris with Devonta Adams. Now that's not off the board, but I love that combination of a secondary, just get those two guys involved. I think Saquon over on FanDuel is too cheap still, so I will play him in any matchup, even though I don't love the matchup for him. I think New Orleans is actually better than people think that they are defensively. Mostly what I'm finding, because I'm trying to still play the pay up for receiver game, although we did get news today that may force me to change some of that. I like Jonathan Taylor quite a bit on both sides. I think Miami's got a really good defense, but you have a workhorse back with 2 touchdown upside who's going to be owned on FanDuel, have no ownership because of his price on DraftKings. Even if they have trouble moving the ball, they'll run it 30 times if it works at all. And again, he's got 2 touchdown upside if he gets it going. I like Antonio Gibson in that Washington Atlanta game quite a bit. And I like the Atlanta. I like Ridley to run it back. I like Cordarrelle Patterson again, and I think Mike Davis is viable too, who's 5,100 again. The problem with Mike Davis, as you guys see, he's losing. He's barely winning the snap count. Barely winning the carries battle over Patterson. And Patterson, you get the wide receiver upside also too. So I'm just going to keep going that direction while no one's doing it. You mentioned Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I like that play quite a bit in that game that I like. I think you could even use him in Mahomes stacks if you want to pay down at running back and pair him with Hill or Kelsey or one of those guys and Hardman or one of those guys and even Pringle. The way Mahomes plays, it's a lot like Rodgers, where if it's not going to be one of his Rodgers has Adams, but this, you get the weird, 150-yard 2 touchdown game from MVS, or maybe it's Lazard one week. If you have great quarterbacks who are good at going through their progressions and their reads, you're going to have opportunities. So, using those guys in the running game that way. We need to see about the San Francisco situation, but I'm open to that running game definitely with what Seattle's looked like so far. But I like both Atlanta running backs, obviously not together. If they were playing like Kansas City or something, there might be a time to use them together. But I'm in this range quite a bit. I'm with a lot of Mike Davis, a lot of Edwards-Helaire, a lot of the 5,900 Antonio Gibson. 6,100 Antonio Gibson, 5,900 Chuba Hubbard. I'm going to be probably with the field on a chalky David Montgomery because I still don't know who the Lions are, and I'm open to that they're going to give him the opportunity. I like Najee Harris. I'm a little chalkier at running back this week, with the exception of the guy I waited till last to mention, or the 2 guys. But I like Aaron Jones. I like Nick Chubb a lot. I think this is a week where we might see Nick Chubb get off. It was a Kareem Hunt week last week. I think this week is going to end up being a Nick Chubb week. And it's really just the production that's been lacking. because he's been there in obvious running situations. So it's kind of hurt his production. He's still getting, he had 22 carries last week. And yet Kareem Hunt, on half the volume, put up, 20 whatever fantasy points he did, 27, I think he had. I know everyone wants to play the high end running backs, and I get it this week, but I personally would like to save that money and spend it wide receiver. However, it is scary because these guys all have 40 fantasy point upside, and I am looking currently at mostly fading them. Maybe changes Sunday. I'll let you guys know Sunday morning, 11:30 Eastern time, but I'm mostly paying down. What's your outlook on running back?
No, you said a lot of really good stuff there. I want to start back at the Dallas game again.
Okay.
Ezekiel is at 6'5". I mean, he's been like 8K back year in and year out. I've been high on him this week. If you're in the Discord on Showdown, I was all in on Zeke. I unfortunately didn't have Schultz in that game, and that was my death. But regardless, he's too cheap. I really like a lot of what Bobby just said at running back. I don't think you need to necessarily get all the way up because we do like these receivers or the high-end receivers. Aaron Jones is the flip side to that Rodgers Adams stock we just talked about. So if you're going there, maybe grab a receiver on Pitt, one of the guys. I know there's some injuries still there. I don't know about receiver yet over there. As we'll
have to see who's healthy before that one. I don't know either.
I don't think we know. I know everyone, I don't understand this one thing. Chicago-Detroit game is super chalk. I'm not getting it. I know you just said you like David Montgomery, but I think I'm going to be under the field in this game. They have the lowest total on the slate. I do get that they think they're both two crappy defenses, so that means it could be a huge high-scoring game, maybe out of the blue, or it's just going to be a stalemate after stalemate type of game, and I don't want any part of that. But I mean, it could go 50-50. We don't know these two teams yet. Like Bobby said, we don't know what they're going to do yet. It's still early, small sample size on that game. Chuba, I do like. He's cheap. But Zeke, I think that run game is going to be really good on that game. But also, if you're stacking Carolina, please do not forget about Robbie Anderson. Huge upside. Hasn't done much yet this year. So if you're going to stack that game, don't forget about him. Darrell Henderson coming off injury at low ownership. I know people think Sony Michel's going to take carries. I really think Henderson's a good play at low ownership. You can still get him 5-6. He's definitely in play. The Gibson and Washington game we talked about, I really do like. Antonio Gibson with Ridley or a secondary correlation. I'm going to talk a lot about that because that's been in a lot of these slates, guys, is don't forget about your secondary correlations. We got Gibson with a Pitts or a Ridley. I like that combination. Mm-hmm. Edwards-Helaire with Philly. I think he's more of a great, I paired that last week where I had Helaire run back. It worked out really good because he was cheap. And it's kind of interesting to run back with a running back. But if Mahomes isn't going off in the passing game, which would take down a GPP, then Helaire is the other guy. So play Helaire and then play the stack on the other side. So that's a good option. Chris Carson's there. I think San Francisco's got a decent defense. Everyone thinks the Seattle's been playing slow. I like to attack the passing side on that one. So not really going there. So I'm kind of staying in that top tier of 12 backs right there that we just talked about. I
like it, man. I do agree. I want to just second what you said about. I'm not into the. I think that's where the ownership's going, right? It's the running backs in the Detroit Chicago game, which I do happen to like both running backs. I can't ignore what I saw my whole life with Jared Goff and why we've had to live out that nightmare with him, and that he's going to throw the ball to the tight end and he's going to throw the ball to the running backs. It's just the way that it is. There's death taxes and Jared Goff using his dump offs. That's what he's going to do. It is kind of interesting in that I'm not going to jump to tight end or anything, but I do like the running backs in that game. And I can play David Montgomery because I'm playing him as a cheap option in my KC stack, and he's going to be chalky, but I don't care because I'm playing an unowned KC stack. You know what I'm saying? And I need value, but I'm happy to switch him over to the other guys you mentioned. I like the Henderson idea. I don't mind Swift on the other side. Again, also going to be pretty chalky, but I do think that, maybe, for a game that does kind of suck, I'm just going to say Detroit is going to try to throw the ball a lot. And if they ever have to, if you think that Chicago gets out to the lead and wins this game, I think that there's an argument to be made for Hawkinson and Swift. Anyway, let's move over to the wide receiver spot. As I mentioned, I love the Hill combination this week. I love Devontae Adams. This is why the reason I can't spend down up at running back. I want these guys. And by the way, I want Cooper Kupp. I don't care. I'll keep taking it. I talked about, I mentioned briefly about route running. He ran a move that I can't remember what former receiver was saying it, but it was on the show as I was watching the other day. he said that little double move that he did the other day that was like, I mean, he said, I've never seen a receiver make a route like that. And they had pitched it to McVay, and they said he had been working on it with apparently he and he and Stafford have been working extra time together in the or had worked extra time just trying to develop these extra, near goal line situations. And I thought that was really interesting. So I love the high end. I'm going to play even against my guy, Jalen Ramsey, a little bit. I think Ramsey is unbelievable. Don't make any mistake about this. Like he's not going to be on Hopkins half the game. He'll be on like 70% of the game, maybe even more. DeAndre Hopkins is an absolutely elite receiver. This is my problem. Of course he's going to be low on because look at the guys around him. But I'm just saying, if I'm going to be interested in that game at all, and I'm going to be playing some Murray stacks, I'm going to have to get some Hopkins. And maybe, the vertical threat isn't as much there, and Ramsey covers him up. But you know what that just means to me? Somebody's going to be guarding Hopkins one-on-one and rather than double covering him. And if that happens, I mean, good luck. I love Ramsey. I love him. He's unbelievable. But I'm going to take some shots with all of these guys. I will try to be over the field on every high-end receiver, basically. Except for maybe Lockett this week. I do like Metcalf a lot because I just think there's too much upside there. And I know there is for the running backs. This is the way I'm building. So those guys are having heavy on. I want to be heavier on Lamb than I do on Cooper because he's a little too high owned. I love Moore, but unfortunately going to be really high owned. Have no problem with a great call on Robbie Anderson as a pivot off of Moore in that same game. And then in the lower tier of wide receiver, I mean, I like Beckham as well. I want to see what happens with the Pittsburgh situation because I'm open to getting some exposure there. I'm just double checking my list here to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody. I do have Anderson on there as well. Yeah. Lamb, Moore. Yeah. Pretty much the guys I mentioned. And then we have the weird potential value week. Okay. So we have no receivers for Tennessee anymore. And they had two great ones before. So that's going to open up Westbrook Ikine. I can never pronounce his last name. That's pulling a Rohde on that one. But as a cheap option, I would probably start leaning towards him a little bit ahead of Samuel. Maybe they won't have to throw the ball against the Jets. Maybe they keep it on the ground. I think the Jets defense is better than people think, and they're going to force them to throw the ball because they'll just stack everybody in the box and try to stop Henry. Will they do it? I don't know, but I'm open to taking the Westbrook angle. And I like Curtis Samuel as a part of that secondary Washington stack as my cheap options. And I'm not going to leave out Robert Woods. I know he's going to be popular, but he is going to, he's going to have he's due for a monster game. Again, I like that game environment a lot between the Rams and Arizona. The Rams might, the Rams might beat the hell out of them and it might make us all look stupid, but I think Arizona is a little bit too talented for that to happen. So I think that even if the game is within 2 scores by the end of it, you might be looking at a gold mine in that whole game. Obviously Woods is going to be popular, but I mostly want to spend up at receivers. And my favorite is probably Adams, but I really like everybody around him as well.
Yeah, I mean, you said all really good things. I mean, I might not even have to say anything this week, but
I'm sorry, man. I do that.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, that Curtis Samuel, I'm waiting to see a little bit. I think that's more of a Sunday approach for me. I know I think he's going to play, right? He's pretty full go. I think they said. Yeah,
I think he's probable. Yeah, I think it's pretty likely.
So 3K guys, he's a cheap guy, but another cheap guy we haven't really talked about. I mean, obviously the Tennessee guys. I don't know. I don't really like that Jets game. That's going to be tough for me. I know Henry's going to be chalky, but I guess this Westbrook guy 3-2. Someone's got to catch the ball, so someone's going to do something.
And just last week he had a good game with that. Once Brown went down, and then now you have no Julio also. So yeah, you're right. Somebody's got to catch it. Sorry, keep going.
Someone's got to catch it, and if he's only 3.7, I think you gotta have him in your pool. I mean, he's got to be there. DJ Moore to me is too chalky. Amari Cooper's chalky, but they're so cheap, 6.6 and 6K. They're high volume guys for their teams. I know only because Gallup went down on Dallas, and it's only Cooper and basically CD. I prefer CD this week, to be honest. I know he's a little bit costly, but I think that draws his ownership down. So go with CD. That Washington stack's pretty good. Terry McLaurin, and then we talked about Curtis Samuel. You can even throw Logan. I know we're not on tight end, but throw like a stack with like Logan Thomas in that stack, and then you can run it back with like Ridley or another tight end. We'll talk about Pitts. Robert Woods is still too cheap. I know he's going to be chalky. He's 5.3. I feel like his price just goes down every week. But another positive correlation, you'd be surprised, is actually Kupp and Woods together. They actually, when they have big games together, like they actually vault to the top. So it's really positive correlated for a ceiling outcome.
Right.
So like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's been cup. But normally last year, small sample size, this year, like both of them were having elite games at the same time. So we'll see if we can each get like 25 points each or 20 points each. And then Stafford's got like 35, and that would be a good ceiling game for the stack.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't mind Higbee there as a tight end option. So we got a lot of receiver options. I really like, obviously Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, we talked about because they're going to be in our stacks. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are very low owned guys. I like it. They're the single digit ownership. I think we got to go there. I bet high on DK. You know, I locked him in pretty much almost a lock last week in my lineups. I mean, I put him in 90 lineups out of 150 on FanDuel last week. That's how locked he was. So just letting you know, like sometimes I take big stands DFS, and that just happened to be one of them. I do it more in basketball. I'll 100% guys in basketball. Regardless, Justin Jefferson, Minnesota stack, he's coming in low on again. I liked him last week. He did good. I think he's a great receiver, and if he's only 8%, I really like that game. Bobby talked about Odell. He's a great run back in that stack. You could do like a Cousins Jefferson stack with Odell run back, or Adam Thielen's been pretty popular. Like Jefferson and Thielen been getting a lot of work. I know Delvin's going to play this week. You could do the running back receiver combo, but it gets kind of costly. So just kind of watch your stacks on that. We did talk about San Francisco a little bit because they're playing Seattle. So Debo is kind of chalky, but if you're playing the Seattle side guys, you can play Debo with that stack or like a Kittle. Because you're lower owned on the Russell stack. But don't forget, here's my one guy, Brandon Ayuk, 5K on DK.
100%. I'm in.
Please don't forget about him as your run back. Put him in your player pool, guys. Robbie, I already gave you. So that's kind of where I'm at. I've been a high on Rondell Moore all year. But there's Kirk there, there's Hopkins there, there's Green. I mean, I don't know what to do. It's been so tough, you know. So it's gonna be a tough one there, guys. So those are some of my favorite guys. So.
Yeah, Moore and Kirk are for me, they're Arizona stacks only, or maybe a run back for the Rams side. But I love most of what you said. I did want to add, Ayuk was the one of the two guys I forgot to add. Ayuk and Corey Davis. I know you don't like the Tennessee game. I don't really love the game, but I think that first of all, he's getting the targets for sure. You have a quarterback who's struggling, but who at least has the arm strength to throw the ball downfield against a Tennessee defense that really has struggled and really doesn't look good on the back end at all. So I'm open to, I like the Corey Davis and Brandon Ayuk both at low ownership. That's mostly where I was going to say as low as I would go until we lost all the Tennessee receivers and Curtis Samuel came back. So that's the only little thing I had to add to it. But I think you do win this with receiver. And again, guys, tune in with us 11:30 on Sunday. I can do better at ranking how much of a guy I'm going to have. It's always hard on Friday when we have Q tags and who knows what's going to happen by Friday. By Sunday, we didn't know Julio Jones wasn't going to be in. You know what I mean? That was going to be one of the guys I was going to target this week. All right, tight end. I am wondering, so let's just take a quick look at projected ownership because I love Evan Ingram. So I'm good with that as the spend down. Okay with the middle and Pitts. I think Pitts is going to have a breakout at some point. But my natural thought in this slate is it's the way that I looked at, if you're doing a season long in baseball or something, or season long in football, and you're playing a catcher in baseball. If you have a catcher that's like Salvador Perez, for example, should be drafted, in my opinion, number one, because his production versus the position is so much higher than anyone else's. Travis Kelce's upside and floor are just way, 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 way ahead of everyone else. Now that's going to be the same every week, but anytime he's lower owned, I'm going to be all over on it. And I'm usually going to be over on him anyway. Look at his projection. Look at his player props this week. 7.5 receptions and 91.5 yards is his prop. I want to pay up here too. This is why I'm going to have so many. I'm going to have to use one value receiver, 2 high-end receivers, 2 cheap running backs, and Travis Kelce. Because Travis Kelce will be in tons of my lineups regardless of stack or not. I don't think anyone else is as sure of a thing. I'm fine when I don't like Dalton Schultz, actually. I prefer the Ingram angle in that game personally. But I don't really have a lot of love for any of the popular stuff outside of Ingram. I like TJ Hawkinson as the potential to maybe come close to Kelce as a guy who could put up a ceiling type of a game just because of how much Goff is going to look for him. But I don't really love all this other stuff that everybody's into. I do think Ferkser is now more in play than when I did my initial research, just because, again, the lack of receivers. But that feels weird too at high ownership. I just think Kelce is I don't know. I'll probably have him in 30 to 40% of my lineups minimum. And I think Hawkinson will be in 15 to 25% of my lineups as well. So I am looking to spend up at tight end and pay. Obviously, I'm going to have to spend down at defense.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of people are probably coming into this, oh, tight end's not that important. We got all these guys, right? But if you look at the data that we shared in the Discord, tight end's been very important in the Millie Maker wins, guys. The run backs, opposing tight ends to the stacks, the tight ends in the winning Millie Maker stacks. So I think all but one lineup doesn't have a tight end in the Millie Maker winner lineup. Week 2 on FanDuel, Millie Maker did not have a tight end to the either the main stack or the secondary stack. So guys, you're going to have your main stack. Usually you like QB, receiver, tight end, and then you have or you could have a secondary stack of a receiver, tight end. So they've been very popular getting the right tight end. So make sure you guys aren't just paying down for that 3K crap, or, everyone's going to be high on Schultz. So what that means, what that's telling me, if everyone's high on Schultz, is you probably don't want to play him. Like, to be honest with you, that guy could go off for 0. I mean, Jarwin was getting most of the balls pass-wise. I know Schultz has kind of exploded lately, but that doesn't mean it doesn't switch. So if everyone's on Schultz and Jarwin catches the touchdown, is he playing this week, Jarwin?
Yeah, I believe he's in. I don't have any information.
Yeah, so that's still kind of a split tight end role there. Hell, Jarwin had the first catch before Schultz in the game, the last game. So, so it's like, guys, if he's 16% owned because he's in some great game, he might have 0 catches by the end of the night. Like, that's a big fade by paying up for Kelce at 6%. That's going to score 25 points. Mm-hmm. Like, that's massive at the tight end spot.
And by the way, also to mention the game you talked about, your secondary stack. What about a Kittle? I mean, Kittle is a great option too. For that,
man, you're giving away my sleeper, Bob.
What? No, what did you say?
No, you're giving away my sleeper, man. You're giving away
I love
sleeper.
Kittle. I do. Sorry.
No, I did mention him earlier. Remember when I said, hey, you could run back with Debo or Kittle, because Debo going to be a little higher owned, but the stack on the Russell side is a little lower owned. And I really like Kittle. I like Debo, but I also like Ayuk. So there's those 3 would be in my player pool as my Seattle run backs, guys. So in here, if you're building lineups, you can use player groups, opposing player groups. You can kind of set it where when you're building MME lineups, you can have these guys only as run backs and kind of build your stacks that way. So make sure you guys focus on tight end a little this week. I think Hawkinson's probably a good call. They're going to funnel the ball through him. I know a bunch of stuff came out this week. Oh, we're going to get Swift the ball more, but that's just the coaches talking. I still think Jamal Williams is good over there. And I think Hawkinson should return back to getting some balls. I think he's a good play. They're going to have to, like Bobby said, Goff's going to be dumping it off a lot. So that's his go-to guys, but Hawkinson, I know he had a bad week last week. I had a really good lineup there, like 200th in the Millie Maker last week with Hawkinson, 3 points.
Brutal.
Oh, there's that 3 points. Yeah. So, it was over 200 and 223 won the Millie. I mean, Hawkinson had a 20-point game. Like the first 2, I would have been up there with that line winning $1 million. I'm going to tell you that right now. So
I hear you.
Thanks to Hawkinson on that one, but it's whatever.
Yeah,
so
no,
I might have to go back to him. I like the Logan Thomas and Kyle Pitts. I'm going to stay pretty high. Higbee and the stacks, guys. I'm going to kind of target these guys on my stacks. Dallas Goedert can be down there too in a stack, but yeah, I like Higbee. He's been playing pretty good. He's had 2 decent weeks for tight end. He's a little priced up this week though, but
a little bit up for me, but I
hear in the stack. But like I said, I think I want to, if I'm going to stack, you can get Woods cheap still. I know Cup's price is up there, but still, that's not a bad stack. Cup and Woods. I've been kind of going with that. And I might run with it still.
I'm into that stack, by the way. I totally, everything you said is 100% right. As a Rams fan, I can tell you that's absolutely true. There were so many games last year where they both put up 20 plus fantasy points. It was ridiculous. And they will try to get, if they, let's just say they are blowing people out, what do you think they're going to try and do in that situation if they're up by a bunch? They want to get Robert Woods going. And that, by the way they got up, let's say they cut, that they probably got up because Cooper Kupp has got a touchdown or 2, you know what I mean? Or maybe Higbee does. So I like your idea. I do think Higbee in the stacks can make some sense, but overall it's a little higher than I'd normally want to spend for him, especially because he's going to be higher owned than these other guys. But I think for me, just to sum up the tight end thing, it literally is going to be it's going to be Kelce, then Hawkinson, then Kittle for me. And then I'm going to go to Ingram. I understand he'll be owned, but he's the one guy who can actually, from what we've seen in the past with Daniel Jones, we've seen Ingram have those monster 25, 30 fantasy point weeks. And I think Kyle Pitts is going to break out at some point. So use him in part of your Atlanta, Washington situations, but those are the guys I mostly use.
Yeah, I like it. Pretty much spot on there.
All right. How about, so, you know, we talk about it and look, in general, on DraftKings, pay down for your defenses for the most part. There are two defenses with incredible upside. They're the two at the top. No shocker there. I don't think there's anyone that really stands out as much as those top two, the Bills and Titans. And on FanDuel, I think they're so easy to get in. I would probably recommend you just try to get those guys in because I think they are significantly better than everyone else. But there's a million outcomes that could happen in football. And in DraftKings, we want to spend down, right? So I have no problem with taking a shot, but at a chalky Atlanta defense, I'm a little skeptical on that one. I am very happy to be skeptical with the very minimum cost because I literally need the extra 300 with the way that I'm playing to play the Jets against Tennessee without their receivers. And a quarterback who occasionally can make mistakes, but overall it doesn't feel great. The first one that I really start to like is the Colts. The Colts and Lions, I think, are both really interesting. And this is the range I'm going to be in. They are the best point per dollar for a reason for me. And that's the range I'm finding myself. I do like Miami on FanDuel. They're down around 4K. So if you need the extra 1,000 from the top defenses, that's what I would do. But I'm just going to keep the Falcons, Jets, Colts, Lions. But mostly I'll be lower on the chalkier one. So it's going to end up being more Colts and more Lions for me. How about you?
Yeah, I don't mind those defenses. I mean, I'm a guy that usually doesn't focus on defense. I kind of just play whatever. I know some of them are projected a little bit higher. I usually like running the projections that don't factor defense. So it kind of just gives me what fits a little bit. But I know people have been hitting the right defense, like Cardinals last week scoring 18, kind of getting the right defense. But anybody guys can do a pick six. Like any team can do a pick six. So like even the Lions, that's not a bad play. I really like them at 2.2. They're going to get some ownership. I might even get more of the Jets now because, you know, hey, their two best receivers are out. You know, you just have to stop Derrick Henry, and then, you know, maybe Tannehill throws a pick or, you know, we've seen it. So I like that. There's some other defenses. Packers seem to be, you know, Pitt's been not looking so good. So maybe Green Bay, I know I like Najee, but I also don't know. I've been doing a little bit different this year too by pairing my defense against my QB somewhat a little bit. Like Murray's going to throw a lot of like plays, right? Run the ball, get sacks in the backfield, run around. So a lot of times,
Jump balls, he'll throw jump balls.
It's been correlating by him throwing picks and him getting sacks, but also scoring 40, you know, points in a game. So like it just works out because if he throws a pick six, who gets the ball back again? He drives down the field, throws a pick six, like the 40 or something. They score. The defense gets the points. He gets the ball back to drive back down the field.
Exactly.
So like some positive correlation with defense against his, especially the cheap ones. So if you target the cheap ones, you know, like Seattle would be one, you know, I might throw them in my stack or even San Fran. No, I think Seattle's the cheap one, right?
Yeah, Seattle's 2,400. I like them as well. They're just going to be a little.
They're chalky. I didn't realize they're going to be that chalky, actually. Wow. Okay.
I think people have watched Jimmy Garoppolo play enough to feel a little nervous.
Okay, so here's one. Like, look at like Minnesota. Like, if you do like a Baker / Odell stack with like a Jefferson run back, throw the Vikings defense in there.
Absolutely.
You know, like Baker throws picks all the time. You know, so there's just a lot of options down there. I don't usually get too crazy.
Right. Let's keep it on the lower end. And then if for some reason you want to get a little, like, to me, defense is a great place to get a little bit off the chalk. So if everyone really does do this and, you know, if the Lions are whatever, leave the 300 on the table and play the Lions over the Falcons if you have that situation come up. You know what I mean? They just take half the ownership. There's no reason why the Falcons are that much better than the Lions this week, in my opinion, especially the Lions going up against a quarterback who had, 40 yards passing last week. Like, you might just get an absolute, like, I mean, the Lions could end up being the top scoring defense. That's unlikely, but it's certainly on the table. And same thing with I think the Jets have that chance as well.
For sure. And we actually like Washington as a stat kind of. So if they're going to be 20% owned almost on defense for the Falcons, like maybe Washington doesn't have any turnovers, has a good game. Gibson or maybe runs in 3 touchdowns or something. You know, maybe they don't turn the ball over. Washington plays a sound game. Logan Thomas gets a touchdown. Or Terry McLaurin tears it up. Like, Falcons might have no points on defense, you know.
Yeah.
Like that Washington is a team that could like play really well where they don't turn the ball over. I know they have like a quarterback that might not be as good to some people, but like at the same time, like Falcons defense is too chalky. If they score 0 points, you know, it's not worth it. So just get different and play one of the 2 to 10% defenses.
I agree completely. All right, quick sum up. Again, nothing's really changed from the beginning of the show, so I'm going to say the same thing, that I think that I love the Allen to Diggs thing, but I think I want to take the lower ownership of the other guys a little bit ahead of that. So it's going to be focused heavily on KC, Philly for me the whole game. I want the Minnesota Cleveland pieces. I just don't know if I want the quarterbacks personally. I want the Rams and Arizona game. I wouldn't, that's one that I could see dudding because I could see the Rams controlling it. But even dudding, I feel like there's still a couple spots that go off. So you can use pieces like Robert Woods, even if you think the Rams are going to win by a ton. But those are my favorite spots. And then I do like the Dallas Carolina game. You sort of talked a little bit more me into that one. And then I like the Seattle San Francisco game, but I don't think I'm going to be using Russ this week. Although the thing when Russ puts up big weeks, it's usually in a game that's a tough game on the road where they really need him to. All right. Like, I mean, that's his MO. And the one thing I can't help but go back to, and I'm going to have to get some pieces of it. I'll make a note to myself. I need to get the Green Bay stack because it is weird. You have a chalky receiver, a chalky running back on the other side, and a completely unowned quarterback who is arguably the best quarterback in football, certainly a top 3 to 5, depending on what week. If it was after week 1, everybody would say he's not top 20 anymore. And if it was before week 1, they would say he's probably the best quarterback. So it's hard to know what to say these days. But I still believe Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest players of all time. And I think that at no ownership, I can definitely get involved in that. Against the Steelers defense, by the way, has been terrible against the passing game so far this season.
Yeah, and a lot of people I think still think that Steelers are good defense-wise. And that's probably why the ownership for that stack isn't going to be that high, because everyone's like, I mean, they have a decent total for team total, and Pitt's been playing so bad. So I don't mind going there. Nobody's talking about it. So that's another reason why I brought it up. I haven't totally decided how much I'm going to have of that game, but I've kind of talked myself into that game a little bit. I talked myself into Robbie Anderson during the show a little bit more, but I'm probably going to be underweight on the Dallas game more because I do want to maybe get to Green Bay. Also, guys, that's a late game. So we talk about late swap. So if you have a bunch of chalky guys or a bunch of whatever your builds look like, you might want to pivot to a chalk or contrarian build later in the game. So if you need like a low owned guy late in the game because your chalk guys didn't really go, or your guys didn't really go off the chalk hit in the early games, pivot to Rodgers or something in that game, or Aaron Jones to get off one of your backs that's chalky in the late game. You know, you got options there, I think, and that might be the game you want to go to.
I like it. And just to speak on Aaron Jones, like it's the price and all that stuff. I'll take it. You know what? The guy has had the second highest scoring fantasy point game this season by any running back, only to Derrick Henry by a couple points. I think that there's real upside there for a guy who really is going to be like 2% owned. He's a big time millionaire maker play for me this week. He'll be in those $20 lineups a lot instead of these other running backs, just because the ownership gap is too great for me to ignore.
Yeah, that's perfectly said right there, because you want to be targeting these ceiling guys. He had a 41 point game. I mean, that's going to take stuff down, guys, if he's in your lineup. Same with Derrick Henry and why we won with that Russ stack in week 2. I had the right stack combo. That's just enough to get me to the top guys in these single entry, 3 entry max, or even the Millie Maker. You need the 40 in the Millie Maker. You need those 40, 50 point guys. They have to be in your lineup. If they're not in your lineup, you're not winning top 20 in that contest. So if a guy goes off for 50 points and you don't have them, you're hurting. You're playing a lot of catch up.
Yep, absolutely.
And you have to be almost perfect in that contest in the $20. So
yep. All right. So my big take, and I know we'll do our final things Sunday, but I like all the takes we mentioned. But my big thing is just to stay focused on the KC situation. I'm not gonna. There's nothing you could duck me out of to get me off of that game. Literally, unless Mahomes breaks his arm or something. Rohde, do you have any big, like massive, I know you're still going through your builds and we have to wait till Sunday to see everything, but that's the one that stands out to me. Is there one thing that stands out to you maybe overall on the slate that you know 100% that you're going to have a guy maybe like, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40% of your lineups?
Ooh, one of those guys, huh? DK was my man last week.
Mm-hmm.
I might be going back to that same game.
Okay.
I think that's my game. I really like that game in general. DK at 7.2. They didn't really raise his price. I think he's got upside. I really like that game. I'm going to be on the Seattle game, and Like you said, I think Kyle Pitts is going to have some upside one of these games. I've been playing him a lot the first week or whatever. That first 2 weeks, I was all in on Pitts lately. Now nobody's going to own him. I think that's a spot you go back to. Maybe even get that Washington Atlanta game a little bit more than more people think. I think game it's got a lower total, but I think that's where you want to go, guys. And those are the two game sets I'm going to be higher on. Yes, I will have Mahomes. Yes, I'll have Murray and the Rams. Yes, I'll have some of that. But I mean, I think I need to make sure I get exposure to the Washington Atlanta game and the Seattle San Francisco game. I just think a lot of the general public and casuals think that those are strong defenses, slower paced games. And I think you're going to get the low ownership on those games, guys. And I think you just got to get the right piece. We don't know who's going to go off. Obviously, this is DFS. We're talking about where to get different, what to do. And those are two spots where I think you can find leverage in the field. And I think if you get it right, it could be a huge week for you.
Yeah, totally agree. All right. Well, good luck to everybody out there. Thanks so much, Rohde. Awesome job as usual. And good luck to me for fading. I can't believe I'm going to fade. I mean, if I really hold this fade on Derrick Henry, he's going to end up, by the way, he's going to end up, whatever the projections are, don't buy any of it. He's going to end up like 35% owned, especially with these receivers out. So I'm going to have to fade him and Kamara this week and see. Well, I'll probably end up with a little bit of each, but I'll be way below the field. All right, guys. Rohde, good job. For everyone at True DFS, we say good luck to you and let us know how you're doing. Jump in the Discord. I'll load it up for you guys. It'll be on this video, and we'll see you guys hopefully at the top of leaderboards.